11 school days later, kids in Newton are back in their classrooms after the city's teachers union and school committee passed a deal to end the longest teachers strike the state has seen in decades. Now, the union faces as much as $1 million in fines for breaking the state law against strikes by public employees. But a group of legislators are pushing to change that with a bill that would legalize striking for public employees. So where does that bill stand? And does all of this signal more teachers' strikes to come? I'm joined by one of the bill's sponsors, State Rep. Erica Eiderhoven, and Boston Globe columnist Scott Lehigh, who's out with his new novel, Just East of Nowhere. Thank you both for being here. So, Representative, you were on the picket line, right, with the teachers in Newton. They got some good benefits when this was all finished. I want to just run through some of what they got after striking. A 12.6% cost of living increase over 4 years, 60 days of parental leave, more social workers in schools, increased wages for classroom aides and substitutes, and it's going to cost the district about $53 million more than their last contract. From your vantage point and the vantage point of the people you were on the picket line with, why did they have to strike to get that deal?
Well, I think what we're seeing with educators in Newton and educators across the state, that they're needing to stand up to fight for all the needs of their students and their families. And most notably, the support for mental health and social workers was a huge one. We've seen that be an incredible need post-pandemic, and ensuring to fight all the inequities in our public school systems. And that includes both ensuring that teachers are paid a competitive wage, to ensure that there are no vacancies and that they're filled with the most qualified candidates, and to ensure that paraprofessionals and educator aides are being paid a living wage. And unfortunately, $20-something thousand a year, which is where Newton was at until this contract negotiation with paraprofessionals, right? is unfortunately very shameful. And unfortunately, there's still other districts that pay as low as $13K or, in the teens, and that's just not a living wage anywhere in the state.
Paraprofessionals, which are people who work in classrooms, helping the teachers, right, students who have special needs.
Yeah, and oftentimes working with the most vulnerable students in the classroom. Yeah.
I want to re-ask my question, though, just because I want to get your thoughts on why a strike was necessary to do the advocacy that you just described. Why couldn't that advocacy be done in a collective bargaining process that resulted in no school days missed and the concessions being, I shouldn't say concessions, the gains being made by teachers that I just described?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's important to look at the context prior to this. There were 16 months of negotiations for a 3-year-long contract, right? So what we've seen over and over again, particularly in the districts that have had to use this very last resort extreme measure to go on strike, is that we've seen these stonewalling, stalling tactics, particularly these bad management practices. Notably, right, it includes both not coming to the negotiating table, but also substituting, instead of actually negotiating good faith, hiring anti-union law firms and communication consultants to resolve things rather than just sitting down at the negotiating table and figuring it out. And that's something that my legislation really tries to address. And I believe that we would actually see fewer strikes if this legislation was passed.
Hold that thought. I want to get to your bill in just a second, but I know I need to get Scott in here, who has a very different take on teachers' strikes and public employee strikes, generally speaking. Scott, when it comes to the Newton strike, do you have a problem with the terms of the settlement that the teachers reached with Newton, or is your problem more with the tactics that they used to get
more with the tactics? I think that the union here ended up really looking pretty silly. Oftentimes, and I think this has happened, you notice all the unions that do this, they are MTA unions, Massachusetts Teachers Association unions. They're not American Federation of Teachers, the other big union in the state. So the state's divided between the two, and usually the AFT teachers represent the cities, and MTA teachers tend to represent the suburbs, and often the tonier suburbs. And to hear the rhetoric here, honest to God, you would think the teachers were up against Peabody Coal Company or Tesla or some big conglomerate that was just intent on kind of grinding them beneath their boot, rather than the leaders in a city, a liberal city that cares about education, that pays its teachers in the top 25% of teachers statewide, has very good benefits. And if you look at the teacher retention, teachers stay in Newton because they like to teach there. The rhetoric, to my mind, just got absurd. I mean, the union leaders saying, I am so mad at these city leaders. They don't realize the harm that they're doing. And on the picket line, they were talking about, we'd be out here even if a volcano was erupting. They just looked silly to my mind. And going out on pub crawls at night. And then finally, when the judge did what he should have done, I think all along, because strikes are illegal by public employees in Massachusetts. And he said, okay, you are going to face a series of accelerating fines if you're going to keep doing this. They, decided it was time to settle. And I think that should have, now they've cost their kids 11 days. They've cost them their February vacation. And they'll go into the summer because of this. They've disrupted the community, the people who I think genuinely do care about them and who pay them well. And to act as though this is you're campaigning here against a rapacious coal mine or something. It's just dumb.
Erica, I want to get your take on Scott's assessment of the tactics and the tenor among the strikers. He says they're not going against a rapacious, fundamentally exploitative private company, but against a municipality that represents people of good intent who value education. What would your response be?
Well, I think there's a few things here. One is that actually the vast majority of contract negotiations settle before getting into a strike, right, regardless of which federation they're part of. What we have seen, and also I will say that the demands that we've seen from these locals are pretty consistent. They ask for, social workers and mental health supports, as well as a, living wage for paraprofessionals and a competitive wage for educators. And again, I think $20,000 is really, really abysmally low. So those demands have been very consistent among educators, parents, students, and the community. What's different is the management practices that we see and the negotiation practices that we've seen emerge from the districts that don't come to the settlement. And I think, like I said earlier, 16 months is quite a long time for figuring out a contract. Ultimately, they settled on what we've seen be settled across the state, right? And so I think that's where the issue is coming with the negotiation tactics. And even the judge himself said, he was concerned and expressed concern that these coercive fines don't do anything to ensure that there is a fair and effective collective bargaining process taking place.
I chatted briefly with both of you before the show. And Scott, hold your thought. I'll give you a chance to hop back in here. But I do want to give you a chance first, Erica, to talk about your legislation. Because you said that you think the bill that you filed would actually make these strikes less likely by legalizing them. Why would that be the outcome, do you think?
Well, so my bill essentially says that you need to do 6 months of good faith negotiations, and then it would be lawful to go on strike. And so 6 months caps it so that there isn't some power dynamic, or I should say abuse of power, to say we're going to now send the courts and the fines after you, but actually forces for 6 months for this negotiation to take place without the stalling, without the, without the pushing it off and, hiring law firms and consultants to deal with the issue.
Don't get it done.
Exactly. Like, get to the table, like we see with any fair labor negotiating practices, right? So that's something that I think would ensure that we don't get to this impasse, which again is the exception, not the rule, and that most districts are able to get to these agreements, and they're very consistent across the board.
Scott, if you remember what you were going to say before, I'm happy to have you make that point. And if you don't remember what you were going to say before, I'd love to get your thoughts.
Well, what I was going to say is I think a lot of these benefits, frankly, they had secured before they even went out. So I mean, a union will never say, wow, we got our clock clean in that strike. They just don't do it. But I think what they actually won here was pretty minimal. And with decent negotiators, they should have been able to find a way to get that done at the table. They walked away from mediation. I mean, it is true their contract had expired, but they were of course, working under the tenets of the last contract. It's not as though they didn't have protections, this or that. That's the way it always works. And so I think the MTA, for them, the strike is the goal. This is what, since the MTA lurched left with Barbara Mataloni and then with Mary Najami and now with Max Page, who's kind of a gently born university socialist who I think believes he's John L. Lewis or Walter Reuther or some great, labor leader taking on huge greedy enterprises. He's wanted unions to strike, and you can watch these unions. As I say, they're all MTA affiliates that have gone out, and in the last 3 years, they all have been. And you watch the MTA in the Haverhill thing. The judge fined the MTA for encouraging the strike. I think they paid a $50,000 fine. And in the Woburn thing, strike, the judge ordered the MTA to stop encouraging the strike. So this is a tactic.
Well, let me ask you if you believe, and I'm not endorsing or rejecting this proposition, but that the strike is the point for some union leaders. Do you buy the idea, as a long-term student of state government, local government, do you buy the idea that legislation like Rep. Eiderhoven's and her colleagues, by legalizing strikes after a 6-month good faith bargaining period, could actually reduce the number of strikes? Because it sounds like
I don't think it'll work.
Okay, why not?
Here's the problem, and I'm a supporter of unions in the private sector, where I think they are a very important counterbalance to corporate power. But you have a very different political dynamic and kind of political economy in the public sector. And what we've done with teachers and with public employees in general, we have granted them a monopoly on the provision of certain services. You want to, they have a monopoly on the provision of education. You can't both have a monopoly on a service and the right to strike, because it means that power is disproportionate. You have given the union an ability to disrupt civic life as they press their demands. And you always talk about, the rhetoric is always, well, we're doing this for the children. And you hear Max Page talks about it. Teachers hate to be ripped away from the classrooms, but unions, let's be honest about it. Unions generally represent, it's completely appropriate, it's their role. They represent the economic interests of their employees. And that's pretty much what this was about. If you say to the union, you can go out and strike legally with no consequence and disrupt civic life and inconvenience parents and families indefinitely until you get your way, you will have drastically changed the balance of power there and granted to people who have a monopoly disproportionate bargaining power. It's just frankly, with apologies to Erica, it's bad policy that doesn't make sense in the political ecology of the situation.
I will say, monopoly implies that there's one single owner. And what we've seen over and over again with these strikes is that you have 98% of the vote of all of the members, right? You have the vast support. And I think I'll say, speaking for as a legislator myself, it's very challenging to get 98% of any group of people to agree to something. So what I think is underlying those votes and these democratic institutions that make up unions is not about some single actor or owner, but it's about the deep injustices and inequities in our system that leads us to get to this point of saying we are not getting the results that we need to ensure that our public schools are thriving, that our students are being well-resourced and supported, and that educators are put in a corner to have to make more with less. And so I think that's largely what's driving these strikes, and not sort of this one owner narrative around monopolization.
Can I just make this point, though, on a monopoly? Let's say you're a labor leader at Ford and you go out and you're on strike and fine. If there aren't Ford vehicles for people to buy, they can go buy Chevys or Toyotas or other things. If you are a teacher, if you're a teachers union, and it might be let's say half the teachers did not want to strike, or a third of the teachers did not want to strike. Once you strike, they all have to go out. And if you're a parent, because the union has a monopoly on the provision of public education in Newton or in Woburn or in Melrose or in Brookline, any of the other places that have gone out on strike, there's not an option for a parent to say, well, okay, we're not satisfied with this product. We can go have our kids educated somewhere else. There isn't that. So it is a monopoly, even though the vote might not be a monopoly vote.
Eric, I want to get your take on the prospects of your legislation and the companion legislation filed in the Senate on Beacon Hill. My sense from afar is that there's some skepticism and that it's not a slam dunk, even though I think of the legislature as usually being sympathetic to organized labor. Am I right about that?
I would say that with any legislation on Beacon Hill to become a law, it requires a great deal of political will and a great deal of education on these complex issues. I think that what's happened in Newton and across all of these cities and towns across the state around this requirement and this need for there to be good faith bargaining and good faith negotiations so that we don't ever have to resort to these last, measure resorts. And like I'll say, educators, no one wants to be out of the classroom. So I think that the dire need for that the current status quo isn't working, is becoming clearer and clearer within. And we've never seen more support than we have now for this legislation.
I want to roll, just hold the thought for 1 second, Scott, because we're about to wrap up, but I want to get you and maybe Rep. Eiderhoven to weigh in on this. Let's take a look at what the MTA said after the agreement was struck, suggesting that there were going to be more strikes to come.
We taught every other district in this state what will happen if they try to balance their budgets on the backs of our students and educators.
That's my mistake. That's the NTA, the Newton Teachers Association. There have been an increasing number of these strikes and increasing disruption from these strikes in recent years. From, one day in Dedham in October 2019, one day in Brookline in May 2022. Then we've got 4 days in Haverhill, 5 days in Woburn, 3 days in Andover, and now 11 days in Newton. Scott Lehigh, do you expect that this Newton strike is going to pave the way for more actions along these lines in the near future?
No, I don't. I think that again, I think on Beacon Hill that the word has already come down pretty clearly that this legislation is not going anywhere, and I think this strike will only reinforce that sense that it isn't. And I think that what we've learned here is the judge needs to do what judges usually do. So start with and keep escalating fines as a union. That was the mistake that was made here. And if judges stick to the pattern of doubling or tripling fines as the strike goes on, I don't think you're going to see longer strikes. And I think this, when people really analyze this and see that the Newton teachers didn't get that very much, really get much for it, I think they're going to say, this was kind of dumb.
Last question to you, Erica. If this trend does not, in fact, build support for your legislation, as you hope it will, do you then anticipate more strikes along these lines in the future?
I think so long that we are underfunding schools and forcing educators and students to have to do more with less, we're going to see a continuation of this impasse and these demands to continue across districts. My hope is that we're going to keep seeing more and more of these contracts with fair pay, right, living wages, as well as full funding of mental health support, paid family medical leave, all of that be included in more contracts, because we can see that there are these inequities emerging across the entire public school system. And I hope that will ensure we have the thriving public schools that everyone deserves.
All right, on that note, State Rep Erica Eiderhoven, Scott Lehigh of the Boston Globe, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.